Welcome into the Bears Squad Show. I am Joe George, post-game host, and the Bears are back in the divisional round and ready to take on the Los Angeles Rams.
Hey guys, Taylor Dahl here, host of Making Monsters. Caleb Williams does it again, another fourth quarter comeback for the Chicago Bears, this time against rivals in the postseason, and let's keep going.
And I'm Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears, and Ben Johnson hurt Packers fans' feelings because he used a naughty word in the locker room.
Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube and audio channels. Joe George, Taylor Dahl, and Lauren Cox here with you for the next hour as we look back at the Bears' miraculous win against the Green Bay Packers. We'll look ahead to the Rams game. We'll talk about clutch quarterbacks where Caleb Williams fits in. And look, there's that, I would say maybe not a 1% chance that we don't just talk about this for the next hour, but Packers fans are sad. And we don't get the chance to dance on graves very often. So we're going to do it to start the show. As Lauren said, Packers fans they're upset. Media members are upset of Ben Johnson and his colorful language that not so long ago the Bears were told they cannot use on Hard Knocks. Let's just start with your reaction to the reaction, Lauren, about everything Ben Johnson saying bleep the Packers.
Yeah, I like him embracing this villain role a little bit, right? That he's such an intense guy that he kind of says, screw it. I don't have to be, the good guy per se. I don't have to be liked by everyone. Like, he knows that he has the ability as a coach and a play caller to back it up and walk the walk with whatever talk he's going to talk. So screw it. They don't have to like me. They just have to respect me. And I'm going to make them respect me by winning these games and being the brilliant offensive mind that he is. So I'm glad that he's not trying to apologize and walk, and try and be everyone's best friend or whatever. He just says, all right, screw it. We're going to do us, and that's fine. And I like him leaning into that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would have been disappointed if he would have apologized, honestly. This is what it is. This is what this rivalry is, and it had been way back when it was actually competitive, and then it wasn't for a long time, so they didn't have to hear this. We would say Green Bay sucks, but they'd be like, okay, cool, we win all the time, and it didn't matter. But now we say those words, and Ben Johnson says those words, and Caleb Williams, we've seen videos of him with other teammates at sporting events, and they're all chanting it too. It's part of it. They didn't care when Rodgers was yelling, he owns us, when he's leaving the stadium multiple times. They didn't care when their Brewers were holding the L flag at towards the Cubs. They didn't care about all of that, but they care when our coach and our side is finally winning and beating them. And they're also not, I think a lot of it, they're not used to it. They don't know how to handle losing very much in general, especially to the Bears. So it's new to them. It's great for me. I think this is fantastic. I honestly, after the game, as stressful as it was, and I would have loved to just beat them by, 3 touchdowns and not be as my blood pressure as high as it was in the fourth. It was kind of fun to rip their heart out at the end because of the amount of times they've done that to us. And just in regular season games, especially, we go back to even 2018 in that first game when it felt like everything was going to be great. And Aaron Rodgers goes and gets his perks and comes back out and goes off and beats the Bears. The amount of times they've done that to us, it was kind of fun to have that moment of they thought they had it and then to just snatch it away from them. And so I love that he's embracing it. I love that the team is. I love that every person in the city who usually does anyways is leaning harder into it. I think it's great. Caleb and Lil Wayne are going back and forth on Twitter right now about this rivalry. So that makes it feel like it's back, and football's better when Bears and Packers are competitive.
Yeah, it feels like for the first time, there's some real juice in the NFL to a rivalry. It's been a while. Even Peyton and Brady didn't have real juice. It's just these are great games. It's 2 elite quarterbacks going back and forth. We haven't had the hatred. Cowboys, Eagles, and Commanders hasn't lived up to what it's supposed to be in the past. And obviously this one hasn't either. So I think it's fantastic that Ben Johnson's just bought into it. And yeah, I'm not sure he totally believes it, to be honest with you, but it might, so it's maybe a little bit of a radio bit here that he's doing, but I also just don't care. It's like you said, Taylor, we haven't got this very often, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm shocked how sad Packers fans are. But I was also like to not be a total hypocrite. Like, I was surprised how many Cubs fans took the L flag. So, in such a bad way. Like, it's fun. It's like there's a real juice now between Wisconsin and Chicago. And I never want to see my head coach sitting at, what was it, a Bucks Bulls game when Matt Eberflus
just hanging out.
And there's hanging out. Like, it's the last thing I want to see in this rivalry. So I'm for it. Now, go ahead, Lauren.
That's the key thing here, right? Is like, whether it's the L flag or this stuff, like Packers fans are trying to say like this cross line because he's the head coach saying that. But like, I don't think that's where the line is, right? Like this is fun sports entertainment of saying, yeah, we don't like those guys. But like, it's not like, oh, they're threatening them or, like wishing harm on them as human beings, or saying those are bad humans who, don't deserve happiness or whatever. Like, right. Like this is still like, hey, we don't like that laundry and the guys wearing that laundry. Like, I'm sure there is a ton of respect for Matt. He's said how much he respects Matt LaFleur, like as a coach and a play caller. And I'm sure there's a ton of respect for like Jordan Love, the human being, right? It's not like they're thinking they're just like less than human. It's like, no, it's like, we're just escalating how much you don't like that team, that organization, the people that wear those clothes. But the moment you sign one of those players to Chicago in free agency or vice versa, like it all changes because of the uniform, not because of the human beings. And I think that's where the line is right there.
Do you have any reservations, Taylor, about this though? Like, is there anything that like when you hear it, you're just like, like maybe you should have waited for till next season or anything like this? Do you have any reservations about like you're the head coach of the Bears? Because like it is strange. Like it is. It's awesome, but it is strange to see this happening. I hope we get more of it now in the NFL. Yeah. Honestly, like I hope whoever the new head coaches of the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers are, like I hope from day one they say, like, we don't like the Ravens, we don't like the Steelers. I hope this is like the start of a trend. But do you have any reservation at all about this happening from the Bears?
I don't personally, and I think that maybe it's part of it is I just think it's almost been kind of a part of who Bears and Bears fans are is if you go through the tunnel and you chant Green Bay sucks, even if you're playing the Giants, like it doesn't matter. That's just kind of part of who it is. And to live into that, I also think maybe, and this is, most people know that listen to this, I cover the Jaguars too. Liam Cohen's the exact same way. This year, Liam Cohen has had multiple situations. He didn't shake Robert Saleh's hand after the Niners game because Robert Saleh said that he cheated, pretty much insinuated that Liam Cohen and the tree that Liam Cohen comes from and the McVay tree cheat. He didn't shake Saleh's hand after that. And then I'm trying to think, Sean Payton made a comment about how the Jags are a small market team. Liam Cohen used that every single week in his press conference, like, oh, but we're just a small market team. That's what we do. I think we're getting this new era of coaches that are these young, fiery, yes, offensive-minded, kind of dorky, like analytical guys, but at the same time, they're young and they relate to the locker room so well because of when they grew up and the football that they grew up watching and the world that they've lived in this last, 5, 6, 7 years, that they have that now. And they don't feel like they feel like they can be themselves. They feel like they can relate to the locker room a little bit more than maybe what we had seen in the past. And so to me, it's just relatable. That's that little bit of pettiness that I personally have in myself. I like my coaches and the players I cheer for to have that. So that's different. I could maybe see somebody a little older being like, I don't love this. You're the head coach, be a little like have a better look in certain times. For me, it's fun. And I guarantee you that there's players around the league that are like, man, I really wish my coach was like that.
The one thing I worry about is like building these games up so much that it like starts to bleed over onto the field a little bit, like in terms of getting a penalty, right? If like you just are so amped up for playing the Packers. I mean, we saw before the game, Torrey Taylor, and there was a little bit of a scrum. Like that didn't bleed over, but it was approaching that line of like almost causing a problem there. And you just wonder if, a player like CJ Gardner-Johnson, for example, I don't think he'll be back around the team next year, but a player with that kind of reputation of maybe being a little bit above and beyond in the penalty department, if that's a concern. And then also just the idea of like how much they build it up and kind of the emotional letdown. And we heard them talk to Case Keenum about that this week after the Minneapolis Miracle and saying how like they kind of had this big letdown afterward for their second game and feeling like if you build up the Packers to be so much, especially in the regular season, then the next opponent by comparison maybe doesn't feel like as important. Like you try and keep them all as important, but especially on a year like this year, if you go Packers, Browns, Packers, if you make this Packers rivalry that much more and this big thing, well, then it's like, oh, the Browns next week. Well, like, yeah, we're going to take them seriously, but all of a sudden there's this letdown. Like, well, I guess we're not trying as hard, or we're not as fired up about this team as we just were about that team. Like, just trying to navigate those kind of things that a good head coach shouldn't let become a problem. We just need to see how Ben Johnson handles that for the first time.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, one thing you said, Taylor, that about like the older crowd not liking this, I bet you they don't. I think there's a level of being naive is what I would tell those people. Like, sorry there weren't cameras in the locker room when George Halas was coaching the Bears. Like, they weren't super around when Ditka was the head coach of the Bears. Like, it's like times have changed. Even when Lovie Smith was the head coach of the Bears, like there wasn't cameras really in the locker room recording every single post-game speech. So I think to act like we don't see this from coaches or we've never heard this from coaches, it's just a different world that we live in. Even back then, like journalists might not put this in print if Lovie Smith said it in 2007 about the Green Bay Packers. So like I think it's like a little naive to think that like coaches have never spoken this way about a team that they don't like, to think that the Packers haven't spoken this way about the Bears before. And maybe they haven't because it was, little brother for such a long time. The only thing I would add is just like, you got to keep cashing these checks now. Like you're going to keep talking like this. You got to keep cashing them. Like we gave Ryan Poles, we all had given him so much grief for saying, take the North and never give it back. Like, even if they give it back next year, like he's going to get grief for it again. Same thing with Ben Johnson. Like you just got to keep cashing these checks if you're going to keep talking the talk.
And I think it's also important, like you can't punch down with this either, right? Like you could talk this talk because the Packers have been the better team and the one that wins this matchup over and over again. But like, if we get into some bizarro world where Green Bay is bad for, and wins 4 or 5 games, then it's a bad look to be like, yeah, F those guys. We hate those guys. Cause you're already, at that point, you're already the better team. You're already beating up on them. And it's like, okay, you don't gotta punch down to a team that's obviously already dealing with a bunch of stuff. It's why it was kind of a bad look when Aaron Rodgers was saying, all my effing life, I own you. It's like, all right, dude, we get it. Like you're punching down against a team that's below you right now. So that feels less fun rivalry and a little bit more just like being a mean bully. But like right now, the Packers have been the big brother. So this is punching back at what they've been giving you, not like all of a sudden, what you've won, so now you're punching down. Like, no. At worst, they're at a level playing field right now.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to do it on that side and when you even talk about fans. And that was one of the funny things. I remember after that first Bears-Packers game, a lot of the argument, or not the second Bears-Packers game when we won, a lot of the argument was like, oh, well, Jordan Love was hurt and it was Malik Willis and you played a backup quarterback and da-da-da. And I was like, you guys played so many backup quarterbacks the last 30 years. Like, can we be real? At some point, you just got to be like, okay. And it was hard for us to do that. But I did get to the point after so long where I was like, look, we suck. It is what it is. Until we find a quarterback, we're going to suck. And then now it feels like that's shifted. I mean, you're 3-2 against the Packers since Caleb came here. So you do feel like at least the rivalry's back. But I do agree in the sense of you got to keep it, you got to let it continue. I don't think Ben Johnson's the kind of guy to like all of a sudden the first game next year, him be even if like, let's say they win this weekend, he's like, and then lose the following. Like, I don't see him being like, well, we won a divisional round playoff game, so this game doesn't matter as much. I think honestly it'll fire him up even more because he'll be like, we were this close to having it. And he saw kind of he experienced that in Detroit. And that's another thing. He probably already had a little bit of annoyance from the Packers of being in Detroit too. I'm sure Dan Campbell fed into that a lot. Dan Campbell's one of those bite your kneecap type of coaches. So if anybody was saying crazy wonky things in the locker room, I guarantee Dan Campbell had some crazy things to say about the Green Bay Packers. And so I do think that bringing that into another team that you now are having in the same situation of wanting to beat them and that being your biggest division rival, that leads into it. But I also think that he experienced that with the Lions in the sense of, they had like all these high moments and then the letdowns in the playoffs. And you never felt like he like dropped down of like, okay, well, we beat the Packers or we beat this team. And so we're good. It was always like, no, we need to be better. And so that's how I feel like Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams will be, but you got to prove it, obviously. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because we still have playoff games.
We do. And to get really far ahead of ourselves, I will say, unless the Bears win the Super Bowl or are the chosen NFC opponent, if an AFC team wins the Super Bowl, I'm going to call my shot right now and say, we're getting Sunday Night Football, Bears Packers week 1.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just like
Oh,
with
yeah.
all this going, like, Mike North, not the radio host, the one who makes the schedule for the NFL. If he doesn't schedule Bears-Packers week 1, it better be because the Bears won the Super Bowl and they're opening the season on the Thursday night game. But speaking of that Packers game, let's talk about the actual game itself before we look ahead to Rams-Bears coming up this Sunday. We'll do that next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in. Take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or the hidden fees. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save people hours every single week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/lockedonnfl. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/lockedonnfl. That is ethos.com/lockedonnfl. Ethos.com/lockedonnfl. Application times and rates may vary.
All right, so it's 21-6. The Bears are down with 13:36 left to go in the fourth quarter. Taylor, Lauren, and I did the post-game show after, so we've discussed this game a little bit, but we got time to look back. But walk me through what your experience was like on Sunday as the Bears are coming back and getting the victory.
So I'll start with, I'm a very superstitious person. And you guys know we've talked about this on here before. I host a Bears group in Jacksonville where we meet up and we watch all the games. So there's a place we've been meeting here locally that the owner is a Chicago fan. So we reached within the last, probably month and a half that we've started watching games there, because he reached out and was like, look, I'll do Chicago dogs. I'll get Malort. I'll get Old Style. I'll do all the Chicago things to like make this just feel like you guys are at home. And he's incredible. So I'm not bashing the place because the place is fantastic. I just unfortunately watched the first Green Bay game there, the Niners game there. And so my vibes were like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm too superstitious. So I told my friends, look, at halftime, if we're losing, I'm going next door. Everybody else can stay, but I've got to go next door and watch this game. So, of course, halftime, we're losing. I walk in next door. There's a Packers fan sitting at the bar right there. And when I walk in, he immediately is like, oh, no, like, you don't want to just go home? And I, at this point, was kind of like, it's almost impossible to come back, but let me just talk my talk because that's what I do. And so I was like, wait, you didn't know Caleb's a fourth quarter quarterback? That's what we do. And he kind of like laughed, whatever. As this game started, the comeback started happening, the look on this man's face, like every time he looked over at me, was like, no way this is going to happen. No way. And I'm like, he keeps doing it. I don't know how. Every time I feel like it's impossible, he does this. But there were a few things that really stood out to me this game. Number one, the locked in. You can talk about how Caleb locks in and some of the throws. The 4th and 8th throw we're going to talk about probably for the rest of our lives. That's one of the things that I think is just there. But there was a few other moments where I just felt like, even defensively, if you go back and see what the defense did, and I talked to Corey Wooten this week. That podcast will be coming out on Friday for the preview show. And I asked him, like, what changed so much with the defense when it comes to why they Jordan Love was doing anything he wanted to, we pretty much shut him down for 5 straight drives. And if you go back and you look at those numbers, he was like 8 for 11, 117 yards, 3 touchdowns in the first 3 possessions. The next 5, he was 3 for 11, 24 yards. He had the 2 intentional groundings, and they punted 4 times. So that is crazy. So I also want to look at the defense and be like, what they did were whatever magic they created and Dennis Allen was able to do. What Corey said was more so he felt like Dennis Allen was finding ways to get pressure, even that he's like not sacks, but pressures, which was making Jordan Love very uncomfortable. And he's like, if you go back and look, you can see he was rushing some of the throws during those moments. They couldn't run the ball, obviously. And there was also 64 yards rushing in those first 3 and only 24 yards rushing in the next 5. In the next 5 drives. So the Bears defense just turned up a notch during that moment, right when they needed to. And I think it's a combination of a lot of different things, that little bit of pressure they were creating. I think that they were able to just, as much as you could, slow down Christian Watson doing that. And those big passes, you kept seeing some of those chunk plays from Jordan Love. There was like a 36 here and an 18 there. And those were the things that I think kill the Bears the most, but they were able to at least contain a lot of that stuff and not really let anybody else get the ball, which I think was huge. So just watching it happen and going back now and seeing some of the things that really were going on offensively and defensively for the Bears, it just felt like a switch turned on. It'd be nice if that turned on a little earlier than when it has been recently. And I feel like we've said this now 7 times, but I do think that they may be figuring some things out defensively that may help this week. And Kyler Gordon coming back, not saying he was like this huge impact, but now this weekend you have Kyler back, excuse me, CJ Gardner-Johnson's coming back. Another thing Corey Wooten said about, because I was asking about TJ Edwards, obviously TJ Edwards getting hurt in that game, and your stomach drops a little bit because you're like, oh no, like this is kind of the anchor of that defense and the guy that is kind of calling everything and telling people where to go and where to be. But he said he kind of likes DeMarco Jackson, and because TJ's been playing hurt, DeMarco healthy is better than a hurt TJ, and he's noticed that recently. So he doesn't expect a huge drop-off from the linebackers, and I think that's a huge thing to look into. But, yeah, it was a crazy game, and now I think I've said this 5 different times this year, where it's the craziest game I've ever watched, but they just keep doing it.
Lauren, when you rewatched the game, what stood out from you the most in the Bears comeback win?
Yeah, I think it felt nice to see real tangible adjustments from Dennis Allen in the second half that felt like, okay, like there's an acknowledgement at least that like them trying to run a bunch of man coverage and 4-man rush isn't working. And like, it feels obvious, but like, at least it's an acknowledgement. They went to a bit more zone. I mean, they still ran plenty of man in the second half. They don't completely abandon and flip everything over, but they blitzed a little bit more, and the blitzes were more effective when they did. They ran a lot more zone coverage and just mixed things up more on the back end. Most of the first half was just like cover 1, single deep safety, man coverage, and a couple of little things, like mix in a couple quarters calls here and there, but like those end up kind of being man coverage on the outside anyway, so it doesn't really help the cornerbacks much at all. But they went to a lot more cover 2, a little bit of cover 3 in there to give them some zone help over the middle of the field. And like that made such a big difference. The Packers took their foot off the gas a little bit too, and that that also is a factor in there. But I just hope that then they can go into the next playoff game and say, okay, maybe let's not start from the same starting point that we've been starting every week, just to change at halftime every week and realize that same starting point isn't working every single week, especially when it's Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams on the other side. I'm cautiously optimistic that this caliber of receiver will force Dennis Allen's hand to not say, well, we'll try man-to-man coverage first, because I think he can reasonably say, well, maybe we can cover Dobbs and Wicks and maybe even Christian Watson now that we got Kyler back and Jalen's playing, whatever, well enough, and Nashawn Wright might get one. But I think he's smart enough to look at this game and say, hey, okay, we can't even try to just go man with these guys, so let's sit back in zone and hopefully those adjustments stick.
Yeah, I'll go with the offensive side for mine. It's what they did in the second half, I think specifically with Loveland and his involvement, and he was involved early too, but they just found at halftime, it feels like, a real weakness within the Packers defense. And that's one where, like, yeah, you'd like to find that, before the game to be able to attack that. But they moved the ball well on like that first drive. Like I feel like the score kind of outshadows some of what happened on offense in the first half. But in that second half, they just found ways to pick them apart. And Caleb was still having throws, I thought, when I rewatched it, where I was like, like that's not great. But overall, like it just still was like big time throw after big time throw. And I don't think we can say enough good things about what Caleb Williams and Colson Loveland did in that game, specifically, obviously, in the second half of how good they were. I also thought, DeAndre Swift ran much better in the second half. Like, it just seems like everything just clicked. And while I agree, like, the Packers took their foot off the gas offensively, I didn't feel that on defense. Like, I feel like the Bears' offensive success was more of a reflection of their quarterback and their coach in the second half of the game.
Yeah, I think one of the big keys in there is you saw in the second half, it comes down to when you saw Theo Bennett run that route at wide receiver, like
Great route.
Signaled something. It is like in the second half, they ran a lot more of that 13 personnel with 3 tight ends. And sometimes one of those tight ends is an offensive lineman. But like in the first half, they ran it 3 or 4 times, and they were almost all running plays. They loaded up and trying to pound the rock in that, and Green Bay would load the box, and they couldn't really get good box numbers. In the second half, they came to those 3 tight end sets and passed the majority of the time. And every time they came out in 3 tight ends, Packers went to their base defense, 4 defensive backs in the field. It was almost always zone coverage. Most teams don't run a lot of man coverage out of base. So like it just created a lot more predictability for the defense for Caleb, and also knowing that like Colson Loveland's a wide receiver caliber player, and Cole Kmet is a plus receiver in the tight end game, that like even though you're in your heavy personnel, you could trust your pass catchers to kind of run a more full passing offense. And you could even use Theo Bennett as a decoy, that now the Rams are going to have to study that and prepare for, what if they do throw it to the offensive lineman? It adds so many other little wrinkles in there when they're putting Olamide Zaccheaus in at fullback sometimes and running him out of there. Like Ben Johnson really got into his bag in that second half, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah, the touchdown to Colston, they had 3 tight ends and a running back out there. Definitely were showing a running back, a run on that play. And so much so that if you go back, the Packers had 3 linebackers and 1 corner out there. And so I feel like that just kind of shows the genius of Ben Johnson and what they can do. And that's why I think when you look at this weekend, like the chess match that we could possibly see from a Sean McVay and what Ben Johnson's been able to show. And we kind of said it before the playoff, before that last game, when we were like, do you think we haven't really seen, like, he has some tricks up his sleeve that he didn't even want to show during the regular season? I think this weekend we see a couple more that we're like, wow, he's been holding on to those ones for a while.
There's a few plays in particular that when they've put a wide receiver at fullback in the I formation, he's running a route. He's been open a couple of times, and like they haven't thrown it to him, but like there's things like that where like he's been running something, but the ball hasn't gone to, like there's an option on the play the ball hasn't gone to yet, that I think we're gonna see more of that, where it's like all of a sudden it's been something they've built up towards all season, but they haven't actually gone to it yet. Kind of like the fake screen wheel route touchdown. Like that's 18 weeks of putting it on tape for opposing defenses to think they know what you're gonna do, and then boom, you got them.
Yeah, I think that this chess match is going to be fascinating. Like you've got 2 coaches who can do pretty much anything. Like the Rams can run 13 personnel. They can run a normal set where, I mean, how many times this year does it feel like Tutu Atwell is like all of a sudden has these big plays out of nowhere, and like they just keep finding guys. And now the Bears are getting a little bit healthier and a little bit more injured in other ways. And we can kind of start slowly transitioning into the Rams game, because you mentioned Theo Bennett, and I want to hit on that before we go to break. It's what do you like, Laura? What's your gut tell you, and what are you hoping to see at left tackle, either at the start of the game or maybe how it plays out throughout the 4 quarters?
I would be surprised to see Braxton Jones out there at all. I mean, just given that two things. One, he was benched for Theo Bennett anyway, so they've already given us evidence to say they prefer Theo Bennett at a tackle over Braxton Jones. But even beyond that, like even if that weren't necessarily the case, like if they'd gone straight to Ozzie or something, like Braxton Jones hasn't been practicing for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long it's been. He certainly hasn't played in a game since week 4 or whenever it was that he last played. Like there's just a certain amount of rust that, yes, he may have a lot more experience, like 44 games compared to Theo started like 8 games, I think. But like just kind of throwing some guy cold off of the, not off the street, but kind of like off of the injury report. Like I just don't want a rusty, less than 100% Braxton Jones. Like even if you think Jones and Theo Bennett are neck and neck, a barely healthy Braxton Jones who hasn't played in a long time, it drops him down to where I still think Theo is going to have some problems and have some trouble, but Ozzie Trapillo had some trouble against Green Bay too. So there's regardless of who's going to be over there, they're going to have to send more help there than maybe they have in other weeks.
Yeah, I think that the one thing we kind of saw from Theo Bennett is he's a better run blocker than pass protector. So I feel like in a game, especially this weekend, when you're talking about what the weather's supposed to be, We wanted them to run the ball a lot last week. We probably I didn't see quite as much as I wanted, but I think the backs did enough to get you through that game. Maybe this is a game where you just kind of pound the ball heavier, especially early on in the game, because Theo's better at that. But at some point, you still have to be like, look, we've got to throw the ball. You've got to give Caleb the chance to win the football game too. And so it will be interesting. But yeah, I don't see Braxton unless unfortunately something happens to a Theo, or he's just getting completely pushed back into Caleb every play. And then maybe you're like, we've got to figure something out. Do you see a world? And I know this is like a probably huge stretch, but since he's one of your best offensive linemen, a world where Darnell goes over there and then Braxton's on the other side, or Theo's on the other side, I mean.
Like at this point in the process, you don't want to rock the boat too much and just say, hey, we'll live and die with, potentially weakness at the left tackle spot and some inconsistency there. Cause it's sort of like it's about not downgrading two positions or changing up two positions instead of one. Like maybe you're upgrading left tackle technically, but like you're disrupting two positions instead of one. So I think they'd prefer to keep it that way. We can't rule out the possibility of somebody like Jordan McFadden, who they've said we trust at tackle or guard and have made him healthy and active on game days. I mean, he's been a guard his whole career. I don't think he's ever started or played an NFL snap at left tackle, or certainly hasn't started a game at left tackle, but has started at guard. So I think they'll leave him there, but they know in the back of their mind that if there's a tackle injury, they could throw him out there, and he is a little more experienced. So you never know what they have up their sleeve, but I think given how much they've used Theo Bennett on offense in recent weeks, I think they're feeling pretty confident in him as somebody that they can kind of plug and play wherever they need.
So that's the only area where I am curious. Like we've seen the sixth offensive lineman be a factor in Ben Johnson's offense. So like, does Braxton Jones technically play left tackle on certain plays, and Theo is the sixth offensive lineman, maybe on the other side of the field or next to him? Like, do you keep him in that role on those certain packages and move stuff around? Or maybe it's McFadden, or as Braxton Jones is the sixth offensive lineman. Like that's the only because I think it's Theo. It's just when you go into that personnel where you would go with six offensive linemen, like is that out of the game plan? Which I don't think it will be. Like just how Ben Johnson handles that, I'll be very curious.
There was one or maybe two plays that we've seen where Jordan McFadden was on the field as an extra offensive lineman this season. It is one play in week 18 against the Lions. He came in at tight end in the goal line. And then there was one player this season where he had to plug in at left guard for a snap when Joe Tootie came out for a moment. But so he has a little bit of that. The littlest amount of experience in that role. So I would suspect they'll just say, we're sticking Theo at left tackle, just be a left tackle, and we'll roll with Durham Smythe or Jordan McFadden, or we can't rule out the special team or the practice squad tight end Nikola Kalinick that they've called up from the practice squad a couple of different times and had him active on game day, that he could be in the mix there too.
All right, let's take a break here. Let's talk more about this Rams-Bears game because there's a lot to get into. Obviously, it feels like it could be a matchup nightmare for the Bears defensive backs, but C.J. Gardner-Johnson's back. So what does that look like in the secondary, and how do you try to slow down Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams? We'll get to that next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. It works right from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's quo.com/lockedonnfl. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, so we've got a matchup problem, it seems like. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. Well, they're a matchup problem for anyone, frankly. Like, it's not just a Bears problem, but the Bears secondary has gotten beat up pretty frequently this season, whether it's T. Higgins and Jamar Chase or the Packers or some lowly teams you've played as well. Lauren, what do you want to see from the secondary in terms of like the rotation? Like, how does Kyler Gordon, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Tyreek Stevenson, how do you feel like it all fits as a puzzle together this weekend?
Yeah, I still haven't seen or heard, and please, if either of you have, please let me know, because I just haven't seen anything. An explanation as to why Kyler Gordon didn't start against the Packers, and they used McLeod for a couple drives, and then all of a sudden Gordon was in and played the rest of the game. Like, I don't know why he needed a couple drives to break at the beginning. So like I haven't gotten a good answer explanation as to why, but I assume now that he's had another full game under his belt that he'll be good to go and good to start against the Rams. And then from there, like, I've never been a huge fan of like rotating guys in the secondary. Like, it's kind of like the offensive line for me, where it's like, have your best defensive backs on the field and then have them like, who are your best five? That should be out there in nickel. Like, if you're rotating Stevenson and Johnson or whatever, like, one of them is going to be better than the other. Use the better player. And I mean, I realize that I'm sure sometimes there's like ego, and you're paying Jalen Johnson a lot, so you can't just fully bench him and worry about feelings and long-term implications. Like, I guess there are complications, but like, it's the playoffs. Just put your best cornerback on the field. If you're taking out a better cornerback and putting a lesser cornerback on the field in a rotation, then you're making your defense worse by doing so. Like, personally, I think Tyreek Stevenson has played like one of your two best outside cornerbacks. But whether it's Jalen or Nashawn Wright you replace him with, that you could argue, but also has shown some pretty poor effort and like motor, like finishing plays on that. Like, that's tough. Like, when he's on, he's one of your better cornerbacks, but when he's not on, he's jogging after Jordan Love. And it's like, well, I understand not rewarding that with playing time. So I'm kind of just saying, all right, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Nashawn Wright, those are the guys who are supposed to be your best, most consistent players. So stick with them and roll with them. And you could bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson in that like third safety role. They used Jonathan Owens in that role, and Elijah Hicks. They played 5 or 6 snaps against the Packers. I love CJ Gardner-Johnson as that dime back, and you can blitz him and do a lot of different stuff. But like, I don't want to see like a one drive of Kyler, one drive of CJ, one drive of Kyler, one, like, who's the better player? Then he should be the one on the field all the time. And same thing on the outside.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when it comes to you can match the nickel and dime better than you have been able to recently, because have we seen Kyler and CJ on the field? I can't even remember at this point. We haven't at all. Yeah. So you haven't seen them together on the field. I will say another thing that Corey Wooten was saying is he kind of wants to see a little bit more Tyreek Stevenson this weekend. He said Tyreek's more physical. We know that he's a little handsy. We've seen that early on in his career where he's getting, some penalties and stuff like that. But he just said he's a little bit more physical, a little bit more go after the ball, wants to have that contact. And he said he thinks that's the type of thing you're going to have to do this weekend against a Devontae Adams and a Puka Nacua, is have somebody who's willing to just go after and kind of fight that wide receiver. And so he said he'd personally rather see Tyreek out there. But I agree with you in the sense, Lauren, where you put your best 5 out there, or whatever package you're in at that point, because I just think that you don't want to keep having this too much of a rotation where it's just hockey shifts that starts to get too clunky and no one's getting in the rhythm of anything. And so I do think that you want to have your best guys out there. That sounds obvious, but you don't want to have to be like, well, here's a couple from Kyler Gordon, but we also need to rest him a little bit. So here's a Nashawn, and then, oh, never mind, let's put Tyreek out there for a play. I want to see some of these guys. I mean, I hope I also see a lot more zone. I think it was like 44% man that they played this last week. That clearly wasn't working in the first half. So a lot more zone and zone blitzing and stuff like that, which maybe you can get Brisker and Kyler involved in those things. And then you just open up a lot of opportunities for those guys.
Yeah, I think the one, because I like to see a little more Tyreek, because like, frankly, I'd rather see the Bears get a couple pass interference penalties and be a little more handsy in this game and be as physical as you can possibly be with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, and just try to take the good with the bad and just be overly physical in this one. I don't think we will. Like, I think it's going to be the Nashawn Wright show on one side and Jalen Johnson on the other. I feel like we might see a little bit of rotation, though, with Kyler Gordon and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Like, specifically if Kyler's getting picked on the way that he was. But then again, CJ Gardner-Johnson's been getting picked on left and right when he's out there, too. So I think I would trust Kyler more after another week of practice to be able to have his best version of himself. But it's a tall task regardless. And again, like I said earlier, it's tough for everyone. Like, it's Matt Stafford, who probably is going to be the MVP, or at least going to finish second in the MVP this year, and arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, and a guy who once was the best wide receiver in the NFL. Lauren, like when you look at this from an offensive perspective, like, do you feel like the Bears are going to have to score 40 points to win this game, or what do you feel like the game plan is here going into Sunday's game versus the Packers?
Yeah, it does feel like a game where like the score will need to be higher than the temperature, right? The Bears have gotten in some shootouts before this season or before during this season, but they're facing the number one offense this week, right? Like, I think it's we kind of assume, okay, a defense is going to have trouble with any offense that comes into town, but like this is the best offense statistically they have faced all season. So like, I think it's going to be like another level harder for that group to make stops. And when they were struggling to make stops against, Green Bay and Detroit, who are not bad offenses at all, but now you elevate that to the next higher level. Like I'm worried about the Rams getting 30 points on the board without too much trouble. And it's going to feel more like that 49ers game or even the Bengals game. And it scares me that like they did this against the Bengals and now you're going against the Rams. And it's like, that's just such another level. I know the Rams secondary has had a lot of issues this season themselves. And there's some concern in LA that, oh no, how are they going to be able to slow down Caleb Williams and company? But the Bears have not faced a pair of really good receivers like this. Like you said, like this is just kind of next level above and beyond with a quarterback of this caliber throwing to them that unless Stafford's finger is still a lingering issue, because he did not look the same in the second half, but like if he's healthy and dialed in and everyone's good to go, I think the Rams are going to put up a lot of points. So the Bears have to too. And I think we'll see then Ben Johnson go for it on a lot of fourth downs again, try and play that time of possession game. And I think it'll be a fairly similar game plan against what they did against Green Bay, just hoping for better execution in the first half when, instead of shooting yourself in the foot with miscommunications and drop passes and penalties and things like that.
Yeah, because to your point, the Niners, who have a good offense, you didn't face George Kittle. You were struggling against, yes, Christian McCaffrey, who's one of the best players in the NFL, but it was Tongus and Ricky Pearsall that were giving you a hard time. And so this is a whole other level up from that. I will say, I feel like, yes, losing TJ Edwards, I feel like the defense outside of that has gotten healthy, a little healthier since that Niners game. So maybe some of those things help. I do think that, to your point, Lauren, earlier about the adjustments and Dennis Allen maybe not being so stubborn in his like, no, we're playing man no matter what. Maybe that will a little earlier come like, okay, you've got to open this up a little bit and do some different things earlier in the game. And we've seen pressures get a little bit more. Grady had his best game of the year, I think, this last weekend. And so maybe we're seeing Grady fully healthy for one of the first times this season, and that interior pass rush and interior pressure can help a little bit in that sense. And so I think there's some things that maybe you just hope they can do enough to slow them down, but it does feel like a game where, Alex Smith said the Rams are going to score 50 on us. So that means we have to score 51.
For this next one, I'll kind of let you guys just take it and anything else from the game you want to hit on. For me, the other thing I'm really curious about, and I don't want to take, coach speak is coach speak at the podium, but I do think Ben Johnson's comments today as we're doing this show about getting the run game going are important, because I do feel like this is a game where you really do need to control the clock more. Like it's that 49ers game where, you're going 3 and out and they're scoring and 3 and out and they're scoring. Like that's going to be much harder to overcome. Like at some point, the magic in the fourth quarter is going to run out if you keep getting down 2 touchdowns. And I know the Panthers came back against the Rams last week and made it a hell of a game, but I just think in this one, like they have to run the ball, I think, more deliberately and more frequently with both DeAndre Swift and Kyle Nungai. Just try to keep the defense off the field as much as humanly possible. Sustain drives. They don't have to all end in points, but just try to limit the possessions in this game, because if you're just going back and forth every 4 or 5 plays, and it just feels like this game might get out of control, at least from my perspective of what we're going to see this weekend. Lauren, what's something else from this game, offense, defense, special teams, wherever you want to take it, that you're looking for the Bears to get a victory?
Yeah, I think Chicago needs special teams to be an advantage in this game. And of course, like, it's easy to say every week, oh yeah, if you just have a big kick return or a blocked punt, yeah, that's a big advantage for anybody that gets that on their side. But specifically, the Rams have had special teams problems this season. And they fired their special teams coordinator mid-season, and it hasn't gotten a ton better since then. Surprise, surprise. It wasn't all his fault. But the point being, like, I don't think Bears special teams has been elite by any means, but they've been good, right? We saw a long return from Duvernay this past week. We've seen them block a punt and block a field goal, I think, over the course of this season, like obviously the onside kick situation. So like that's an area where it should be an advantage on paper, and it needs to be an advantage then in practice too. You can't just get your run-of-the-mill kickoff returns to the 25, punt returns for 5 yards here and there. Like, that's fine. I mean, you certainly don't want any mistakes there, but like, I need something just a little bit more above and beyond. Some kind of big return, some kind of blocked kick, some kind of turnover on special teams, something extra. I think it's going to be hard to win this matchup without a little bit of a gift in that phase.
Yeah, I agree. And I do want to give a shout out to the special teams because I feel like they've gotten so much better throughout the season. I remember like 3-4 weeks in, I was like, there's a problem here because the Bears had one of the lowest average, field position, like starting field position. That now has shifted almost completely where they're top 5. We've seen some big returns from Duvernay, including in this last game. Duvernay, one of those returns were close to being what saved that game, just being able to start the ball at that point. But I agree with that. I'm also going to say, just get it, the takeaways / turnovers in general, because this last week, if you would have told me we beat the Packers and we turned the ball over twice, they didn't turn the ball over at all, and we couldn't run the ball, I would have never believed that the Bears ended up winning that game, but they did. But I think this is a game where you do have to get a takeaway or two. I think the defense you could do that in a game like this. And last week, there were many opportunities. They just kind of stared at the ball and let fumbles roll away from them instead of falling on them. So some of those, get a couple of those. And I think that, it helps you big in this game because the longer you keep, and this kind of meshes with what you were saying, Joe, the longer you keep the ball out of Matthew Stafford's hand, the better chance you have.
All right, how are we feeling? Bears going to win this weekend? Lauren?
They're a coin flip every week, right? Well,
yes.
I'm not going to be surprised if they do, but and I think I felt better about the Packers game than I do this one. And I didn't feel great about the Packers game. I'm really not feeling great about this game. I think it'll be a good one. I think they'll be in it at the end, but I think the Rams are the best team Chicago has faced all season. They're an inconsistent team for sure. And if you get the bad version of the Rams that gets in their own way a bunch, the Bears can and would win this game. But I think Stafford and McVay in the playoffs are just a little bit too much to overcome at this stage, with first time for Caleb and Ben Johnson being here. So I'm going to say Rams, but I won't be shocked either way.
Yeah, it's funny because I was not confident in that game last week. And at the end, I was like, I'm going to pick the Bears just because I feel like I should pick the Bears, but I don't feel great about it. I kind of feel better about this game. And I don't know why, because all year long I've been saying on here when we're talking on Helmets and Heels, the Rams and Seahawks feel like the two best teams in the NFL to me, but I think we're catching the Rams kind of at the right time. We're seeing some of the ways to expose their secondary. You've seen kind of some of the ways to get to Stafford and rattle him a little bit. And you saw that in that Panthers game. And it almost feels like, how do they come out of that? Do they come out of that Panthers game like, whew, we made it, let's just try and get this next game and move on? Or does that fire them up? Or does that kind of be like, man, that was too close, and now what do we do? Do we overcorrect some of these things that didn't work in the Panthers game? I'm kind of feeling good about it. I don't know, I could really see this game going either way. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back and we lost by 20, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're coming back and we won by a touchdown. And that's kind of what it feels like right now.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. The cold weather thing, the numbers are different depending on which AI platform you Google it on and search on about what Matt Stafford's career is. I think it's actually pretty good. I think he's 1-9 in cold weather games under 40 degrees when it's raining or snowing. So there's a caveat with it. It's when it's outside of that, he's actually fine in cold weather games. I think the Rams.
Is it raining or snowing on Sunday?
I don't think so. I think it's just gonna be bitterly cold on Sunday. I think the Rams are gonna win. But I'm with you guys. I think it's, I think it might come down to the other side of the ball here, where it's close and it's Matt Stafford versus this Bears secondary, and that's the reason why ultimately the Bears don't advance in the playoffs. But I do think Alex Smith is wrong. I don't think they're gonna hang 50 on the Bears this weekend. They can. But I think that, we'll see what this finger looks like for Matt Stafford. I guess that's the ultimate X factor here, Lauren. You mentioned earlier. If he can't grip the ball and it's that cold, it's way more in the Bears' favor. We just won't know that until the game starts, it feels like.
I was joking with our friend Travis Rogers from Locked On Rams that I think both of these teams are inconsistent enough that they would each prefer to be down 6 with 2 minutes left and 3 timeouts and have they both would rather be losing in the fourth quarter but have the ball and the timeouts with time left on the clock so that they can drive down and win it and not give the other team any time left with the ball.
Let me ask you Let me ask you this real quick, Lauren, because last week, obviously, it was one of the better we've seen our defense against the run. What did you see was happening with that? Because all week I just kept hearing people being like, this is the healthiest Josh Jacobs has been all year. He says he feels great. He says he feels this. And it just really felt like they couldn't do anything on the ground. Is that sustainable and can carry over to this weekend?
Yeah, I think part of it was Green Bay being really predictable. They got under center and ran on first down a bunch, but also Dennis Allen kept bringing Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon like right up to the line of scrimmage and kind of blitzing in off the edge there and making them an extra run defender in the box, anticipating that Green Bay was going to go. And I also think DeMarco Jackson has good instincts coming downhill, and I think the guys in the trenches were just a little bit more locked in for whatever reason in the second half. I mean, there's not like one silver bullet that's like, here's the magic trick they got to stop the running game, but I think they just kind of made it a big emphasis knowing Green Bay had the lead and was going to want to just try and run the ball and control the clock.
All right, we got one segment to go. Something we mentioned about Matt Stafford there. I'm just curious where we're at right now. Not where Caleb Williams ranks in terms of just like overall quarterbacks, but quarterbacks with down a touchdown in the fourth quarter, who you want to have the ball. How far down the list do you have to go before we get to Caleb Williams? We'll get to that next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Save time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. All right, so I feel like in this question, so you're down, let's say 6, you need a touchdown, or down 3. Caleb Williams now has had all these masterful comebacks this year. Guys, I feel like the first name on this list still of like who I want to have the ball there is Patrick Mahomes. I think Joe Burrow, I think Matt Stafford, and then maybe Caleb Williams, Lauren. Like, is Caleb the next guy on this list right now? Maybe Josh Allen as well, and then Caleb. Like, how far on your list do you have to go before you're like, yep, that's where I want Caleb Williams. He's the 5th whatever quarterback in the NFL to be in this situation.
Yeah, Josh Allen is the only other one there that I would throw in. Yeah, Mahomes. Let's make Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Stafford. And so then that would make Caleb Williams #5. Like, yeah, I trust him more. I mean, I think when we've seen the Bears fail in any of those situations, a lot of times it's a receiver here or there not making a catch, or it's the offensive line breaks down. I mean, the one interception against Green Bay, like you can start to put on Caleb a little bit, and a good play by the defense for sure. He's not literally perfect in these situations, but he's so far above and beyond what every other quarterback does. And I think part of the bias here is that other quarterbacks haven't had nearly as many fourth quarter comeback situations to see. Like, it's really easy when we've seen Caleb be successful on whatever it is 7 out of the 8 times he's had to do it this season, and maybe we've seen Drake may do it 1 out of 2, and it's like, well, we just have a bigger sample size to say, oh, Caleb consistently does this, whereas some other really good quarterbacks haven't had as many opportunities to show us how well they can do it, and maybe they would be better at it, but their teams are better to not put them in those situations over and over again. But yeah, to me, he's 5th on that list.
Yeah, I agree. I think that another element too, and I maybe in the next couple years, and we're getting ahead of myself again, but because of the way he can use his legs, you may be even talking about Caleb ahead of a Stafford and a Joe Burrow. I was looking at some numbers earlier of quarterbacks this season when trailing, and Caleb had the 5th best numbers when trailing this season, and he had almost 300 rushing yards during that period of time. Matthew Stafford had 4. So I think that element opens Caleb Williams' game so much too, because of the way he can, and we used that, Houdini in the beginning of the season when we were trying to figure out what we were nicknaming him. But I think that adds this whole other element. So if some of those other things like that, this accuracy stuff starts to settle a little bit more and the receivers are catching and all of those elements come into this, Caleb Williams is definitely a top 5, one of the most dangerous when it comes to when he's trailing, when it comes to the fourth quarter. And that's, I think, expanding more and more in that sense, because he just feels like he's starting to, all the tools are coming together at one time. And that's what we've been asking for since this last year of like, okay, we've seen these flashes. When are all these flashes coming together and creating this quarterback? And we're starting to see the beginning of that.
I think the other name that belongs on the bubble here that I'm not ready to put ahead of him, but I think I'm overly negative on this quarterback just based on what I'm saying. But Bo Nix, he's the only quarterback in the NFL this season that has more what they consider as they separate fourth quarter comebacks and game winning drives. Fourth quarter comebacks require that you're trailing. Game winning drives just require that you could be tied and then go for the lead. It wouldn't be a fourth quarter comeback if you're tied. So Bo Nix has 7 game-winning drives that take the lead and puts them ahead for the last time to Caleb's 6. But Caleb has 6 fourth-quarter comebacks, and Bo Nix only has 5 where he was trailing. So Bo Nix has been the quarterback on an offense that has done that a little bit more this season. But it feels to me like Denver is a situation that he has been less individual impressiveness from the quarterback. And not to say that he has been just along for the ride, but that I think Caleb has had to do more individually special throws, whereas Bo Nix has been able to lean a little bit more on like good system with some decent receivers that he can kind of just it's more than game manage, but it's less truly elite special kind of throws than Caleb, who's had to kind of single-handedly do this a lot, and Bo Nix has had a little bit more help, plus a much better defense on the other side.
I was about to say, I'd like to see like which games exact. I remember they had the one where they scored like 30 in the fourth quarter. So that's one that obviously sticks out. But I was wondering that because I'm like, what happens, like if you hypothetically swapped and put the Denver defense in Chicago right now, how much better would you feel about this weekend?
Oh, I mean, this weekend, Bears are going to the Super Bowl if they've got Denver's defense.
But like the other hypothetical, if you put Bo Nix in Chicago and Caleb Williams in Denver, right? Yeah. Who's finishing more of those drives with wins? And I think it's Caleb in either, right? Because Denver has more wins and they're the much better football team. So like I think that's a big part of it too. That I don't know that Bo Nix gets the Bears to 11 wins this season in the exact same way that Caleb has, and I suppose Caleb probably gets the Broncos to 14 wins because I think he's even more a special quarterback in those moments. So like I think that's part of it too. I think I'm a little bit Bo Nix biased, so I try and put that aside and try and separate a little bit. But I'm not fully convinced he's a truly special great quarterback. He's a very good quarterback, but I don't know that Broncos fans want to put him in that next tier, and I don't think he's there yet.
I agree. All right, last question for you guys here. Best guess: how many times, Lauren, have you watched the 4th and 8th throw?
Oh wow! I thought you were gonna ask about the compilations of angry Packers fans.
Oh, those two. That 10-minute one is incredible.
I've watched that more than I've watched the 4th and 8th throw, I think, but they're both pretty close. I think only about 5 times, I would say. But I have cherished it, and it's every angle is incredible.
Taylor?
I think that night I watched it 5 times after. Like that's where I was. I also, the moment I got to work, was showing everybody, and they're like, "We saw it. We know. You don't have to. We're sad. The Jags lost. You don't have to keep showing us this." I don't even have an estimate because I think that's including like just the times I've seen it on Twitter, just the times that there's other now clips that people have made where it's like that with the little Jordan logo popping up, and so many times. But I would say definitely over 20.
Yeah, I would say like I've watched it every time it's popped up on my Twitter. if someone posts it, like I watch it. I watched it today because someone got a tattoo of it.
I saw that.
The numbers don't look correct. I know what they were going for in the tattoo, but it looks like it says 81, not 18. But I probably watched it at least every time I've seen it. But yeah, those Packer compilations of just all the guys who are like doing like the live stream commentary are just they're incredible. They're incredible, and I've watched so many ESPN Milwaukee clips this week too. I can't get enough of those guys.
Yeah.
All right, well that will do it for this episode of the Bears Squad Show. Myself, Lauren, and Adam will be back with you on Sunday night after the Bears take on the Rams in the divisional round and are hopefully advancing to the NFC Championship game. That will do it for us today. We'll talk to you then. Peace.